exciting. And because we're short on time, I'll let you get right to it. So enjoy the next half an hour. I'll be dialing back in at 10 o'clock UK time, and I'll see you then.
Thank you. So let's have a look at the agenda for this presentation. So today I'm going to look at value stream management, as I mentioned, and how does that position within the overall digital operating model. So many organizations are transforming their operating model as we speak to DevOps, continuous delivery, organizing around teams and value streams. So we're going to look at what is value stream management in this context. It's a relatively, so value streams are not new, but value stream management in DevOps is relatively new. So I'm going to talk about what is that and how is the tooling market supporting that. And also I'm going to look at what are the value streams you need in a DevOps model. And we'll look at the data flows and integrations as part of these value streams. Now, let's have a look at value stream management in the operating model. So we see that in many organizations, we have a hybrid mode of working where we have traditional applications and cloud, but there's a lot of things changing, as you could see in this picture. So we changed the way we collaborate in our network. Instead of a hierarchical organization, we have different teams collaborating together to deliver value. We have new architectures with microservices and platforms. It's, of course, DevOps, continuous delivery, containers, multi-vendor sourcing, where we have different external vendors involved in our value chain, self-service, security, and data-driven IT. And one topic is value stream management, what I'm going to talk about today. But you see there's a lot happening in the operating model, and it changes how we deliver and operate digital products. And a key area is value stream management. Now, the question is, of course, if you think about value streams and you look at your own organization, is how digital ready are your end-to-end IT processes? And typically, it's not talk about individual product teams, but a lot of product teams need to work together and still dependent on each other. So there's potentially handovers, and sometimes it's a handover to a team that actually deploys something in production, or it's a handover to other teams that are involved in the actual testing in some cases. We have team dependencies, we have manual activities, external vendor involvement, and a lot of times there's no clear visibility of these end-to-end flows in the IT organization, and not just from a demand getting something in production, but also if there's a security issue or vulnerability, we need to fix that. We have customer end user requests, they want to have access to my application, because as a DevOps team, you're now accountable for the full product lifecycle, not just delivering new features and new releases. You also need to be able to support them, but proactively detect issues, resolve questions, issues, and so on. And at the same time, we need to look at basically the speed of delivery, security risk compliance, costs of our services and products, the quality and the customer user experience. So there's a lot of things we need to look into. Now, what is a value stream basically, and what is value stream management? Now, I guess everybody knows what a value stream is, but briefly, a value stream basically represents the end-to-end flow of value-added activities triggered typically by a demand, like a new requirement or a new Epic feature. And the outcome is that it's actually delivered to the customer and stakeholder. And there's a lot of activities work in this value stream to create this value to the customer. And value stream management, what is that then? Value stream management is basically saying, how can I optimize these value streams? So it's really about designing and implementing the right set of activities, processes, the tools, the right set of practices, like a testing tool, deployment tool, the backlog tool, the monitoring tool, how they should be integrated and exchange the data. Because eventually it's all about a flow of work through this end-to-end tool chain and supported by the right set of practices. And of course, the people and skills and competence there. And value stream management is really about how do I design these optimized value streams? How do I monitor and continuously improve the value streams, like identifying things to improve, like maybe we have manual activities we can automate, or improve the release frequency, or the change success rate, or improve the mean time to repair if there's any issues. So value stream management is basically a discipline that looks at how can I continuously optimize these end-to-end value streams. And these end-to-end value streams are pretty complex. If you think about the DevOps tool chain, we have many different components part of this end-to-end value chain. We manage our product portfolio, of course, because we don't have a single product team. We have hundreds of different products and services. We have a portfolio backlog where we capture the epics from the business, the product team backlog, like in Jira or Azure DevOps, our source code, our build, our artifact repositories. We do our code reviews. We have various testing practices and tools, like for unit testing, performance testing, security testing, and so on. deployment and provisioning. And once something is operational, we need to monitor our services, the application and the infrastructure layer, security monitoring, log analytics, collecting the events, detect potential issues, and also collaborate with different teams to resolve them. And of course, we have a service management system where we have to maintain the incidents and potentially the CMDB, where we understand what is deployed where and how the world is connected to each other. Self-service portal so that the end users of our products can maybe report issues or provide self-service, like requesting access to the product or service, or look at the knowledge base. And of course, collaborate and notify and dashboard. Now, you can see the complexity because typically an end-to-end DevOps toolchain consists of dozens of different tools with different data models, with different practices. And value stream management is really about how do I connect these things together, because it doesn't make sense to have a very good test management system and a very good CI/CD pipeline if they're not very well connected and we don't have the optimized data flows. So it's really about making IT flow. Now, if you think about this end-to-end DevOps market, you see the complexity here. There's a lot of different tools out there in the market, and it's not about the tools. It's really about the end-to-end flow of work through your IT organizations and your value streams. But typically, different teams, they have different tools or they use it differently, and it's very difficult to get the transparency and traceability we need. And continuously new tools are added for deployment, provisioning, monitoring, and so on, and reporting, dashboard, security, not to forget cost management, license management, and so on. But there is a specific area that I would like to focus on in this complete tooling market is value stream management tools. So there is a new category of tools appearing that they focus on how can I manage these end-to-end value streams? Because in a value stream, you might have 10 different tools, like your backlog tool, your source code, your build, your test, your monitoring, your CMDB, your incident management system. But how do you connect them all together and get this traceability? And that's where value stream management tools fit in. They try to get this end-to-end visibility of what's happening. And you might not need a value stream management tool. You might just collect the data in different ways, but it's a theme out there. How do I create this end-to-end traceability across my DevOps tool chain? Now, before we zoom into what are the value streams you need in a DevOps model, we look at what are the capabilities we're generally talking about. So we basically, if you look at DevOps, we could say there are 4 key areas where we focus our work on. One is about strategy to portfolio, which is really about managing the full product portfolio. Because as I mentioned, DevOps is organized around product teams, but we don't have one product and one team. We have dozens of products, dozens of teams. Larger organizations have maybe hundreds of applications or products. And maybe dozens of teams. So here it's about managing the full portfolio, new ideas from the business, map that to your service portfolio, your enterprise architecture, and manage your portfolio backlog. So here it's really about looking at the bigger picture of everything about all my applications, my roadmaps, my target architecture, my improvement opportunities, and collect them in a portfolio backlog. And then on the team level, the product level, of course, we have our product backlog, we do the development and design, and we create our releases, which is about the continuous integration, continuous delivery. But once something can be made available for deployment and provisioning, that's not ready because then we have something running in an operational state. But typically we have a catalog for end users to request access to our application or services or other type of requests. So typically there's request management involved because that needs to be automated as well. In a DevOps world, request to fulfill has been rejected. They don't, because we always focus on designing and building, releasing new functionality, but the end user that has a lot of type of requests. They want to have access to the application, they maybe want to import data or other type of activities that they initiate against our product. And we need to fulfill those requests. So here's about cataloging and request those services. And the DevOps teams need to be supporting those as well. They need to maintain their own request catalog, provide self-service, self-help, so end user can request. And that ties leading to identity access management as well. And of course, when we deploy something in production, hopefully we know what's running where, what resources are linked to, what application dependencies do I have, so I can start monitoring these configurations end to end and detect issues, hopefully automatically remediate them. If not, I have an incident management capability where maybe end users report incidents. Hopefully we detect them proactively. We try to resolve them. Hopefully we can resolve issues by maybe doing automated provisioning again, change something and it's fixed. And in some cases we need to We do the feedback loop back to the product backlog so that we can fix them, like putting a story in Jira, fix the issue, deploy it, and test it. And of course, there's a continuous feedback loop. Now, what you see here appearing that in the DevOps, there's a lot of capabilities we need. And that's not just one value stream. And I will show you later what value streams do I need to optimize, because that's very important for the DevOps and the DevOps at scale, that you identify the different value streams. It's not just about releasing new features in production, because that's what typically the DevOps community talks about if you talk about software engineering value stream. Now, what you also see is that to improve these end-to-end flows, many organizations have dozens of initiatives to improve these value streams. As you can see here, there's a lot of cards played today. Maybe we want to improve test automation. We want to implement a common CI/CD pipeline. We want to improve security monitoring. We want to improve self-service and self-help, data analytics, service portfolio management, and portfolio backlog. So there's many initiatives, but they're typically very fragmented, done by different business units different ways, done by different product teams different ways. And the idea now is to think about, if you think about value stream management, can we not start to optimize these end-to-end flows and invest in the right things at the right time to improve these, instead of have all these fragmented improvement initiatives? And basically what we start with value stream management is thinking about some lean principles, is what is the value that our customers get? And it's not just using a product, but also how can an end user request access, or how can an end user report incidents? Or if we have an issue, how can we fix that? Or if there's technology upgrade we need to do that. So there are different flows of value you have in a DevOps or product lifecycle. And then you need to map those in a value stream. What are the different value streams? What are the components and capabilities I need? I will show you later what are those. So you can establish the flow, you create a continuous improvement of that flow, because you're never finished. You always try to improve your end-to-end way of working. The landscape is changing. So it's basically a continuous effort to improve these end-to-end workflows to make IT flow. And it needs to be very high on the top priority of your organization and your teams to continuously improve those end-to-end value streams. Now, if you think about what are those value streams then? Now, I had a picture with all the capabilities, but actually there are 8 core, let's say, main value streams or journeys that you need to optimize in your DevOps community. One is, of course, the continuous delivery flow of work. We have a product backlog, new features and stories come in, we design them, we build them, we deploy them, we test them, of course, and make them available in production. This is typically the DevOps value stream or software engineering value stream that most people are talking about. This is about CI/CD and continuous delivery. And that's already a complex environment. And I will show you later what's in there, of course. But that is one value stream. So from idea to get something in production. But there is more. A separate value stream is really about continuous operations, detect to correct. So we have monitoring in place, we detect issues, automatically, hopefully remediate issues if we have the right automation. If not, we combine all the data, the logs, the metrics, identify events, maybe do root cause analysis, and if we can do a fix. If not, we raise an incident in our incident management system and try to resolve them. So it's a whole flow of work from detecting or proactively detect an issue through the actual resolution, which is a value stream by itself, the continuous operation value stream. But there is more. As I mentioned, there is not just one product in our portfolio. We have many different products. So there is one value stream that really looks at evaluating continuously my product portfolio. What are my products? How well do they operate? What do I need to improve? Do I still want to invest in this? Or do I need to change the product vision? Capturing new demands from the business. And then you build your strategy, your portfolio backlog. So this is where you optimize the portfolio as a whole, which is a value stream by itself. And it's continuous, like every quarter or every month, we review our portfolios, identify where we want to invest in, what we need to de-invest in, maybe portfolio rationalizations. And then there is sometimes we have new ideas in the market. And if a new idea comes along, we might need to experiment first. So it's the idea to concept. And that's a value stream by itself. It's basically continuous exploration. It's about, there's new ideas, we need to create a prototype, validate, maybe temporarily set up a team to validate that concept. And if that is a viable concept, then we create a team around it and they starting to develop and continue to deliver that. But it's that the investigate new opportunities is by itself a value stream, basically idea to concept. And as I mentioned, once something is operational, we need to have a good service catalog. So end users don't consume just your own product. They consume dozens of services and products. So we need a good catalog that the end user can find the service. How do you get access, sell the knowledge base, and etc. And then they provide request support from basically request to fulfill value stream. And we automate hopefully all these type of requests. And it can be application related requests, but it could also be platform requests, like I want to order a new server or capacity, and it can be done through a pipeline or through a portal. But it's about automating the workflow of provisioning, deployment, and then operating. And you see they're all tightly linked to each other. And the last value stream, number 8, is basically the continuous improvement value stream, where we evaluate how well we're doing, and that's feeding back into the other value streams. And so here you see the different flows, and each of these flows, I will zoom into a little bit more, has their own set of capabilities, tools, and data needs. That's why it's so important to differentiate this in an organization. So let's have a look at the requirements to deploy value stream, which is really about translating, basically starting with the product backlog, design, develop, test to a test environment, acceptance, production, with the end-to-end flow. And you can already see that this value stream is complex because you meet many different capabilities like your backlog management, your testing, your deployment, and change management capabilities. You see many different tools supporting that. And in this simple workflow, you see you have Jira or Azure DevOps, you got a Jenkins, you got your Artifactory repository, you got your code quality scanning, your deployment, your like Terraform provisioning. But you also need credentials and access rights. So you got your CyberArk, Azure AD, for example. You got your service management system to register the change so that people are informed what has been. So you have ServiceNow there. And you see that this is a complex tool chain, and you need to optimize these. And that's why value stream analysis is so important, starting to look at these end-to-end flows. And this is just the requirements to deploy. This is basically the core DevOps, creating a new feature, make it available in production. But as I mentioned, we also have the detect to correct value stream, which is really about monitoring your service, hopefully proactively detect issues, remediate them automatically. And if not, maybe notify people that there is something going on. We can collaborate with different teams to fix and resolve it. And then hopefully close the incident, maybe update some knowledge. As you can see, this flow is also complex. We have many different monitoring systems. We got maybe an event management system. And of course, we need to CMDB to understand if there's an event happening on a server, how is that linked to which application, and what is the impact for the business. To fix something, we might need to redeploy, reconfigure. So we again have our deployment components. We need our service management system, our Slack and Microsoft Team to communicate and collaborate. And you see there's a lot of data involved. But you could see the complexity again. And that's why it's so important to visualize these end-to-end value streams, understanding the tools, understanding the data. And these end-to-end value streams are complex, right? So one area where people invest in is value stream management, as starting with maybe collecting the data. That's basically a level 1 maturity level of value stream management. Just collect data and get insight. This is where organizations typically start off with, but that's not sufficient, but it's a good start. Collecting the data from Jira, Azure DevOps, your testing tools, your deployment tools, your service management system, and monitoring into a data lake. And it creates traceability. What's going on? What has been deployed? Did we have any issues after deployment? Is the performance affected? So you see, this is an approach that many organizations are taking now to collect the data across these end-to-end value stream tools. But the reality is that if you don't have a common information model, then it's very difficult to collect all the data from all the different teams and get insight. So basically what we need to have, if you want this value stream management to work, is defining a standard information model. And it starts with the product backbone, as you see here. What are my products and services I deliver to the business? Having a good product portfolio and the teams associated with it and the owners of that, product owners, but also how they are dependent on each other. And that, of course, links into risk assessment, cost, teams. But eventually, it's all about traceability. If somebody updates a code for my product, there's a story linked to it. There may be a feature, there is testing. And it's really about standardizing how we develop these kind of integration. How can we trace back that this test has been done for this change? And how, if something is deployed in production, how do we know what's running where, what version has been deployed? Do we have monitoring deployed with it? How, and that results into instant problem change and so on. As you see here, this end-to-end data, that's very important. If you want traceability and visibility, which is essential to get good value streams automated and optimized, you also need to look at this data and how this data is captured in the different systems and can be integrated. So that's a very important start. Look at the data that you have in your IT organization across all your different tools and how they link to each other. Because eventually, We want to link them. So if an incident occurs in production, we can trace it back. What has been deployed? What's been part of the build? Has it been tested? What stories were linked, etc., etc. So it is complex. But you see that most organizations, about 60% of the organizations, are really now starting to implement value stream management. And as a way of looking at the end-to-end picture, looking at the data flows, understanding how all the different teams and products are operating. But it's still in the early phase. So it's a relatively new area where organizations are working on. And Gartner expects in 2023, about 70% of the organizations do have value stream management implemented across their DevOps tool chain. So finalizing this discussion is, if we look at the current state of many organizations, that we have many different teams with their own set of tools, their own flows, with a lot of handover, still a lot of manual activities and dependencies with monitoring, for example, or service management, security, fragmented, difficult to trace and follow. Now we want to move into really the digital workflows, end-to-end value streams, and optimize our end-to-end ways of working. And that's basically what organizations are working on using value stream management. So what is really important is to build and start off with this integrated picture. And so basically, what are the steps you need to go through if you want to implement value stream management? It starts with a, let's say, DevOps blueprint. And this is just a simple illustration of that. Looking at the building blocks you need, your enterprise architecture, your portfolio management, your agile backlog, your testing, your source code, your monitoring, your event management, security, compliance, everything. How are things connected? What data is managed there, like incidents, epics, feature stories, source code, test cases, code quality, and how they're linked together. And then you can plot your own tools and practices to it to see how you can optimize things. So, and as I mentioned, you also need to look at what are the value streams that I need, because DevOps is not just one value stream, right? Your DevOps teams have multiple value streams they talk about. As I mentioned, from idea to production, or if there's an issue, detect to correct, or request fulfillment. But there are other value streams you need to focus on. For example, resolving vulnerabilities. So it's basically vulnerability to remediation. And it's very important that you start identifying all these type of flow of works together, and then starting to standardize these building blocks and the integrations to automate and get traceability across your end-to-end tooling landscape. And that's pretty complex, right? Because as you can see here, typically, we have many different tools out there and many different product teams slightly working differently. And the key question is, well, can you ask yourself, do we want to standardize these value streams across the different teams so we can leverage the integrations between them? So have, for example, a standard way of working around the agile backlog. Because if we all use Jira or Azure DevOps, but all in a slightly different way, with different ways of how we categorize our stories, or we have even different Jira instances, we also need to have multiple integration with the source code, with the test system, and your service management system. So the complexity increases. So it's very important to think about creating this DevOps blueprint, looking at the data and the integrations you need, and then starting with different teams, looking at their current value streams, looking at the current tools and the processes, and look at the gap analysis, create your target blueprint, create an MVP to create this kind of end-to-end workflow, experiment with that, and then basically co-create and collaborate with all the different product teams to starting to improve that for the enterprise as a whole. Because in many organizations, there is a few product teams, they're very mature, and most product teams are less mature. So how can you mature all the product teams to that level? And that requires this integrated approach and value stream management approach. Now, if you want more information about this approach, there within the open group, for example, there's the IT for IT forum that works on a blueprint. There is an IT for IT forum that creates a blueprint for DevOps integrations, data flows that you can use as sort of reference models to assess how is your own organization operating. So that's probably good reference material to look at. Then finalizing, thank you for listening to this presentation. Hopefully you find it interesting to also think about your own organization and think about, let's investigate what value streams do I need and how are these value streams today supported and able to create this target idea and roadmap and blueprint to move on. If there's any feedback or questions, please don't hesitate to contact me through mail or LinkedIn, and I will try to answer any questions also meanwhile in the Slack channel. Thank you very much.
Hey, Rob, we've got a couple more minutes, so maybe just a question from my side.
Yes,
I
sure.
oftentimes face companies who are exactly at that stage, one of the maturity cycle that you described earlier, where you just start capturing data, you just start thinking about how can we set up an IT architecture that works coherently. What advice would you give people who are just starting out, who are just finding their bearings in the DevSecOps world?
Yeah, it's a good question. And it's really challenging because every organization is different. But I think what works very well is, let's say if there's multiple teams working now in the DevOps mode, or maybe more, that you could say, let's create a community where we all work together. And a community could be something like, let's create this visualization of what are the capabilities we need, what are the current tools, how each team does it today. So it's more like almost creating a picture of the current state. That works very well. So for example, if you make a good inventory of all the tools you have out there today. It sounds really silly, but it's typically we don't have a clue end to end what people are doing. So it's probably a good way to start with a kind of reference picture of the different value streams, and then assess with the different teams, how are you doing that today? Even if they use the same tool, they typically use it differently. And so it's probably a good start is to create a sort of community where we say, okay, how do you operate today with all your tools and practices? And there's a lot of standard tools already, like maybe there's a shared Jira and a shared service management system, but often there's all the other things happening, different testing tools, different deployment tools. But probably a good start is to work in this joint picture of the current state, and then slightly create a picture. How do we come to a core target state? Do we want to standardize some data? How we do code quality? How do we manage stories? How do we manage the code commits? How do we do deployments? And then starting to integrate things, because then you can create visibility. That's probably a good start.
And do you think that's one person's job, or exactly? I was just gonna ask that. Who owns it, right? Is it one person's job? Is there a cross-functional team that should be doing this? But that's honestly,
it's so good question, Hubert. The problem is nobody owns this in many organizations. Not really. Of course, some of the products are owned, like a service management system and some monitoring and security, but there are many different owners. And the challenge is that a lot of these tools are not managed as a product. They're just managed as, here is the tool and play with and do your own. So the ownership is one of the challenges. So one of the things that is good to have a DevOps architect assigned, somebody that looks at how does it all work. And so maybe it's a DevOps architect, and some organizations have an IT for IT product owner, which means that they look at the IT tooling to support IT and create a sort of community there. So it's probably good to start with a DevOps architect, looking at a bigger picture. Maybe it's also look at value stream owners. Who owns like strategy to portfolio? Who owns from a capability perspective, and create communities around that. Yeah.
Awesome. That sounds really good. We're going to have to switch over to the next speaker now. But thank you very much for your time, Rob. And again, you'll be available in the CICD Slack channel today. So if there's any more questions about the very exciting and very complex topic of value stream management, and I'm sure we can talk about that for another few hours today, please message Rob on the CICD Slack channel. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much as well. Enjoy your day.
Take care. Thank you.